Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at Deathstate. One of my 2016 New Year's resolutions, not that I normally do that, but professionally I'd like to this year, is to get back in the habit of doing more Let's Look Ats, and I figured what better way to start it off than by taking a look at Deathstate, a game that Nick showed me, and we played on Wednesday, December 30th, NLSS. This is a so-called single-stick shooter. You've heard of twin-stick shooters where you use, usually the left stick or the WASD keys on the keyboard to move, and the mouse or the right analog stick to aim and shoot. Isaac is a twin-stick shooter, Robotron, Smash TV, etc., etc. This is a single stick shooter. No, it is a single stick shooter where you move, but the game automatically fires for you. But it's not as simplistic as it sounds. There's lots of systems that add a little bit of extra complexity there to, cannibalize a little bit of your mind share. It is a roguelike as well. Or roguelite. I find myself saying roguelite even more than roguelike these days, which probably makes the people who are really anal about that word more pleased, I would have to imagine, so it's different every single time. It has kind of like an Isaac time scale to it, 25, 30 minutes for a run, it seems like, although I haven't actually completed one myself. Cobalt did on the show. It took him like 20 minutes. And it's on sale right now. Hopefully still will be as of the time of this video. $17 Canadian normal price, $15 US, $7.50 US during its 50% off era right now. But let's just play it up here and you'll get to see a little bit of it here. I've only played about an hour of this so far, but it's enough to definitely wrap my head around the basics of what's going on here, and I'll do my best to explain it. Basically, you play as one of a variety of characters, but you start as this lady who was visiting her college, and oh no, her professor has been kidnapped by extra-dimensional beings. We've got to go back and save the professor. And the story, in my opinion, is kind of like Isaac, one of those things I don't necessarily focus on too much, but there is something there in case you're interested in that sort of thing. There's a narrative hook to it, but mostly we move around, left analog stick. I'm using the Xbox 360 controller, but you can also, of course, as I just switched here, use your keyboard, and I don't know if you use your mouse. Now, it looks like you just use the Q key instead to use your special ability. But yes, I am using the controller for this, which works totally fine. This is the portal through which you start the level. The game is arranged into 4 worlds of 3 levels each, I think, and as you'll see when we get started here, it's a pretty easy game to actually explain. Pretty much what you do is just dodge. You also have a dodge, like a literal dodge, that's mapped to your right analog stick here, and that gives you a few invincibility frames, basically, to be able to move your way out of harm's way, for lack of a better word. I'll talk a little bit about the graphical style of the game. I guess I'll do that right now, because that's something that I think a lot of people are going to have, fondness for or an issue with. It does have this kind of filter over the top of the game that adds a little bit of stylistic kind of interestingness, but also at the same time can be a little nauseating for some people. I saw some people in chat, and I've seen some people in, like, Steam reviews say that playing the game for a certain length of time gives them a headache. And I've got to admit, I am someone who gets motion sick pretty easily, and I find myself kind of nauseated by visual stimulus a lot, and this is kind of a situation. What is this? Examine. I've accidentally spawned a boss. Not a good time while I was talking about the other stuff. But I have found myself wishing that there was an option to turn that filter off, and I've checked the options menu, I've checked the graphics menu, it doesn't appear that there actually is, which is unfortunate. At the same time, not to, completely say that it's a great stylistic choice, I think it does add a little bit of more visual uniqueness to the game, instead of it just looking bland and, completely matte or flat or something like that. Instead, it has a little bit of extra visual complexity going on, which adds some nice flavor. I think, though, it makes it look better in screenshots than it does actually in motion, and after a while, I do find myself getting a little headachy after playing it, but again, your mileage may vary a little bit there. Not everyone's as big of a baby as I am. These little red squares on the ground, technically they're rectangles because they're not the same size on each side. Those are HP. We start with 3 and we take half a heart every time we get hit. I mean, there are comparisons that you can make to Isaac here. There's comparisons that you can make to a lot of roguelike-ish games. It's basically like a single-stick shooter version of Nuclear Throne. After we kill bosses, which you can do at various altars or throughout sections in the game, there's also champion enemies that you can kill and get bonuses like this. You can get either a tome or an organ or some kind of special ability. Organs are ingested, I should say, which gives you a passive ability. Max HP plus 1, rate of fire plus 10%, damage minus 0.1. So increased rate of fire, increased HP, but a little bit lower damage. Because you don't actually choose how much you shoot. Again, that's just dictated by your actual stats here. That's one of the more interesting things about the game is that your goal, like floor to floor, is basically just to get to the next floor and survive. So it's got kind of like a Spelunky aspect there. But you balance the risk-reward factor of like, well, if I explore the entirety of the floor, I'm more likely to find champion enemies. Like, this guy is a champion enemy as well. Ah, I can't believe I didn't get out of the way there. The dodge roll is a little tricky. You can find yourself getting corner-fucked a lot. The more you explore, the more you find champion enemies like this, but also the more likely you are to take damage from said champion enemies, or even just regular enemies. Let's see what we got here. Ingest. Move speed plus 5%. Pretty useful considering that's like the crux of our dodging ability. But also you can see like that wave of terror stuff that's, oh, I'm gonna die right here. Yep, you can see that wave of terror stuff that was washing over us. Basically that means there's a ghost on the level that kind of hunts us down. So you gotta get out of there in a certain amount of time. We did get an unlock there. I'm just gonna restart another run here quickly because that was a pretty terrible performance. It's actually, I think it's easier than it looks, if that makes sense. Also, notice that we started on a different floor this time. There are kind of alternate versions to the floors. There is some variety in the levels. You're not doing exactly the same thing every time. I also think the music in the game is actually really good. In spite of the fact that when you first play through it, you might think it's a little bit repetitive. On some of the later floors, the tracks get actually pretty bumping, if I do say so myself. Now, we also have some special abilities here beyond the passive stuff that you can get from organs or the tomes that you can actually pick up, which we have not yet seen, but hopefully will on this one. I have this ability that you start with, which is mapped to my X button there. We also have potions. We'll talk about those in a second. What does this eye do? Rate of fire plus 10%. I'm always down for something that is basically just an objective improvement. Doesn't lower our damage. So I consider that a pretty big positive here. But yeah, you can see mapped on the X button here. If I press it, I actually have like an AoE attack that has a cooldown timer associated with it and recharges. And we also have magical points, MP, and the MP regenerates just, I think, flat over time, but also it's been suggested by Nick that maybe as we kill enemies, we get more MP. We can also drink these potions with the B button. Oh, I hate that. That's a live reaction right there. As someone who gets a little bit nauseous for visual stuff in games, I got to admit that I didn't like that too much. Do we know what this potion does? This one gives us your third eye opens, which I actually think is really good. It allows us kind of a wider view of the map to more easily plan where we're going. If there's one thing I want to see less of in video games in 2016, it's like your player being drunk and making me throw up by looking at the screen. Okay, pick up. This is an active ability then. 3-gem idol. Causes explosions, brings pain, 20 MP. Oh, we used it right there. Used 20 MP. You know what? I think it is only like when we kill enemies, or maybe only when we're moving does our MP increase. Now, maybe only when there's enemies on the screen. I don't know. What the whole reason I wanted to highlight this stuff is because these are extra layers of complexity in the game, and I think when I first played it, I was originally like, okay, this is cool, but it's a little too easy because all you do is dodge. Like, in Isaac and Nuclear Throne, you dodge and shoot and kind of manage items or an inventory. But where this game kind of lacks in the sense that you don't actually control where you're shooting, it makes up for a little bit in the way that you can actually have multiple things to kind of keep an eye on. Almost like, I don't want to call it MOBA-esque. This is a shop up here, by the way, but we don't really have... Oh, maybe it's not. It's a gambling house. If we can get another gold bar or something, we might be able to take advantage of that. But it's not like Dota, but you do have special abilities mapped to your character that have cooldowns associated with them. So there's a little bit of a Dota-y sort of thing going on here. And inevitably, this is the kind of thing where your mileage is definitely going to vary. Some people are going to play this game, and I've seen the Steam reviews from these people, and they're going to be like, I don't understand, like, it's too easy, basically. You know, in other games you have to dodge and shoot. In this, your shots pretty much always land, and you're just focusing on basically getting this turret that you're escorting around as buffed up as possible, you know, stacking up HP and working on your dodging abilities. I think there's something to be said for that, and I'd at least in the time that I've played the game so far. This is not early access, by the way. This is like version 1.1. It's been out since like October, so not really the most, you know, bleeding edge of new releases, but at the same time, it's something that's very much in my wheelhouse that I missed when it originally came out, so I wanted to take the chance to show it off here. At the same time, I appreciate that it's doing something different with it. Like, one of the things I often find, and people complain about this in my criticism sometimes, but when I play a game that is a little too Isaac-y, we just had that last time. There are a lot of items in the game. Don't take this as just like, oh, we got the same item again. Your blood feels hot. I forget what this allows us to do. But I kind of find myself comparing Isaac to them in a way that's unfavorable for a lot of games because I'm kind of an Isaac fanboy. In this, it differentiates itself enough by being, you know, by having that single stick shooter sort of conceit going on that even if I don't like it as much as, say, Isaac Nuclear Throne or Spelunky, it definitely adds something new to the table that makes it I wouldn't necessarily say a super compelling purchase, but something that's definitely interesting as maybe a little bit more than a diversion, which is, I think, pretty much the Price is Right point at like $750 US, $850 Canadian right now. I think it's $850 or $870. I don't know. Basically, our economy is in the tubes, so you know it gets better and worse on a daily basis. It's like a day trading or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we'll just play through a little bit more here. We'll see a little bit more item variety for sure. In terms of the things that I have about the game that I really like, I actually really like the feel of the movement. I gotta admit that, you know, to some extent, I find the animation a little... I always hesitate to use this word because it comes out being like a judgment of the game developer's character, which is not what I mean. But the animation looks a little lazy, you know, it's not robust necessarily. It's a game that definitely seems like it's focused more on the mechanics than it is on the aesthetics. Although aesthetically it is interesting as well. You know what? Let's buy the Cthulhu's Pyramid. Modron core, damage plus 10%. That's okay. I mean, I have no idea if it's okay, I should say, because I don't know how it fits into the actual, like, I don't know what 10% means for us, relative to Isaac. If in Isaac I got a damage multiplier that gave me plus, you know, well, times 1.1, I'd be like, that's pretty bad. Tempest Frozen Tome fires 3 chilling turrets, or 3 chilling bullets. So these are the tomes that kind of follow us around. They're basically enhancements for our auto fire, if that makes sense. I hope that's a reasonable explanation of what's going on here. We can replace those tomes with other tomes throughout the game, and we can also buff those tomes with some of the organs and, you know, other abilities that we can pick up. But those are really what gives you most of your hurting power. So we have the ghost closing in on us now. I have to admit, I've never actually seen the ghost. Oh, good, we've got a champion enemy. You can tell because he's a little, you know, visually different from the other ones here, but we've killed him relatively easily. We got a bomb, which I've never really used. Damage plus 0.4, move speed minus 10%. That still seems okay. I think we got one more level, then we fight our boss, and that might be a good time to add a reasonable end point to this video, perhaps. Maybe. If you're hearing stuff in the background, Kate's just cleaning the bathroom. It's not like we're having another earthquake or anything like that. But yeah, I really like the movement. I do think the animation, you know, it could look a little bit more robust. And by robust, I'm not a game developer myself, but it does seem like there's like 4 frames of animation, depending on which direction you're moving in and whether or not you're attacking. Which is fine because, again, as a mechanics-focused game, it works in spite of that, not because of that, whereas, you know, some games do work because of that. Move speed 10% up, rate of fire 10% down. At this point, I'm like, we might as well just take it. We can't stop ingesting it after we've already done it anyway. And that's yet another bomb, I think. I don't know if maybe we can find secret rooms or something like that. I also, you know, the visual filter, there really should be an option to turn it off. That seems like the kind of thing that is a little bit of an oversight. I hope that, you know, there's either a good reason for it always being on, or maybe they could patch that in the future. I'm not going to, you know, add to their to-do list, but fires 1 fireball. So we've replaced our ice turret with something that fires a fireball instead. There are status effects, by the way. Like you can get the ice shots, I think, can freeze or have a chance to freeze or slow enemies. There's also like elemental damage that can be buffed by specific organs that you pick up. So you'll pick up an organ that's like plus 10 to poison damage, but if your tome or yourself are not doing poison damage, you're actually, you can't take advantage of it. So you do have to keep an eye. You know, sometimes it's like being spec'd in an RPG is the way I understand it right now. Is like, you know, you can spec your character as like a dagger class, but if you find a dope sword, you're not going to be able to really take advantage of it as much as you would like to. One of the things that is a highlight as well is that there are these boss fights here. Hi, Star Child. That was my nickname in college. But there's a little bit almost of like a Dark Soulsiness going on here in that it really seems like the best way to handle most of the early game bosses that I've fought. Pretty much just to, you know, get close and circle around in one direction. Of course, now I will die and just make myself look like a complete hypocrite. But we are going to kill this boss fairly easily. I think we have a relatively good run going on here. Things that I like about the game, I actually kind of appreciate the fact that it seems, on its surface, a little bit more casualized. The fact that you don't actually have to aim and shoot simultaneously, or at all. You just have to focus on your own upgrades. Is almost like a weirdly kind of like set it and forget it style for a roguelike that I don't think is as satisfying as twin-stick shooter mechanics for me personally, at least not the way it's done here, but is a nice change of pace, and I'd rather have a game like this that kind of, you know, swings for its own fences. I find the visual effect really noticeable here, but at least notice the enemy variety. In particular, we start to face assholes who are really, really fast here. I appreciate that it tries to do its own thing, and I would rather play a game like this that tries to poison damage and explosion, that tries to do its own thing and semi-succeeds, then, you know, something that is specifically just trying to ape another game and doesn't necessarily do as well at that as the original did. Because I'm always like, well, why wouldn't I rather be playing the inspiration, which is much better than this that was inspired by it? And that's something that not everybody agrees with, but is the way that I tend to fall. I'm not going to mention any game specifically, but you can probably insert your own here. But yeah, I mean, when I die on this run, I'll probably end the Let's Look At, even though it's been a little bit of a shorter one. It's a fairly simple game to kind of show off like this. I actually think this is a pretty nice diversion and something that people probably slept on a little bit last year, and I'm thankful that Nick showed it to me. I will say I don't see myself playing it too much more after this. I don't see myself getting that kind of like, you know, roguelike-ish addiction where I'm like, I'm going to put 40 hours into this, and I'm going to see everything the game has to offer. I'm going to get real Platinum God. I'm going to do speed runs of it and races. We are probably about to die. You do get a little extra HP when you go through the portal, so let's try that. This is something that I almost consider like in the same vein as Teleglitch, where maybe I'll play it for a couple of hours, and we're closing in on that mark already. Maybe I'll play it for a couple of hours and be like, that was a cool diversion, I like what they were trying to do. It doesn't necessarily 100% knock it out of the park, but it's an admirable effort. That's pretty much how I feel about it right now, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. If you're looking for something, you know, at $7 that's going to give you 500 hours of gameplay, wait for a 50% off sale and then pick up Counter-Strike Global Offensive or something like that. That's not meant to be like, to just completely shirk that criticism of like, oh, I think it's not going to last that long. I wonder if that tile meant anything specifically, but apparently it does not. But at the same time, I think this is something that if you're a fan of the genre, which I know a lot of you probably are, you might be interested in checking out. And maybe, you know, you're looking at this and you're saying $7 is a little bit much for my price point for the amount of time I'd get out of this. I think that's fair too. But keep it on your radar as one of those games that, if you are a fan of the genre, is kind of a nice diversion. Not something necessarily with the Spelunky level of depth, or at least that depth is not maybe incentivized as much as Spelunky. Like the moment-to-moment gameplay, I don't find it as classic, I guess. But it's got its own unique spin on the genre, which is something that's kind of refreshing to see as someone who has played a lot of like, well, it's Isaac, but we changed this, or well, it's Isaac, we played this. I'm not trying to necessarily, you know, throw any other games or developers under the bus. He's too fast for me. I'm gonna die. And I also like, it's got a little bit of a down-welly kind of thing in the pace of the game. It's very fast, basically, which means you either, you know, win in 20 minutes or die in 20 minutes most of the time. Or, you know, 5 minutes sometimes. I mean, I can show you the other stuff that's going on here as well. If we go back to the main menu, you can save and quit a run and then come back later. Basically, what you see is what you get here. You know, there's an options menu that gives you some options, like mouse movement, auto pickup, etc., etc. I guess if you really wanted to play minimalistically. And then there's some graphics options, but there's no filter option, unfortunately. Like toggle simple graphics on and off, I believe just makes the tile set a little bit more uniform and generic, I guess. Maybe for ease of kind of visual language, I guess. If you're like me and you're like, oh, what does that tile on the ground do? Nothing. Yeah, this may help you out. But yeah, this is Deathstate. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to describe it as a must-buy, but it is something that if you're interested in the genre, you should check out and you know, at least keep it on your radar and try to get a chance to play it at some point, because it is unique, it's fun, not necessarily something that everybody needs to play, but I think the people that will play it are going to have a fun time with it. For now, it is available 50% off on Steam for $7.50 American USD, I should say, I guess, $8.50 Canadian. Full price is $15 USD, and I would say that at $15, you know, that is kind of like the standard new indie game price point for something that is not like incredibly minimalistic. So I don't think that this is like a price gouging or anything like that. But I do think that maybe at $15 it's worth a second thought and to say like, oh, you know, maybe I'll pick up something else or I'll save my money and wait for a sale. But at its reduced price point, definitely something that is almost akin to a rental, I guess, in the 2005 parlance of the word. And I think you would have a good weekend with this if you picked it up and you could dedicate 3 or 4 hours to it. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button. Helps out a great deal. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. There will be a link in the video description below to pick up Deathstate on Steam. If you are interested in doing so, you can click that link and check it out. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.